Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Like there's a part of you that's missing, but you can't quite put your finger on it? What if those feelings of anxiety or confusion aren't flaws, but signals? Signals that you're being called to reconnect with the parts of yourself you've ignored or rejected. In this video, we'll explore why that fragmentation isn't the villain of your story, but the hidden guide leading you to wholeness. Have you ever had a moment when everything in your life seemed to unravel? Maybe it was a job that slowly drained your enthusiasm, or a relationship that left you questioning who you were. These moments feel unsettling, as if the ground beneath you has started to give way. But what if these experiences aren't signs of failure or weakness, but instead signals? Signals that it's time to stop, listen, and start understanding yourself in a deeper way. When life feels fragmented, when you feel lost or disconnected, it's rarely random. Those emotions, as unpleasant as they are, can carry meaning. Think of them as alerts that your inner world is out of sync, like a warning light on the dashboard of a car. The discomfort isn't there to punish you, it's there to guide you. Psychologist Carl Jung suggested that the psyche isn't just the ego or your conscious sense of identity. It also includes your unconscious, the hidden mental and emotional layers that are constantly at work, whether you realize it or not. When the conscious and unconscious fall out of alignment, it's often the unconscious that starts to speak up through moments of emotional turbulence. Picture this scenario. You've spent years building a career, climbing step after step on a path you thought would lead you to fulfillment. Yet every morning you wake up with a pang of dread. At first you push it aside. It's just stress, right? But the feeling only grows stronger, until one day, it's impossible to ignore. What's happening here? That dread could be the unconscious self attempting to surface, trying to make you see that something essential is missing in the life you've constructed for yourself. These experiences aren't limited to careers. They can show up in friendships, marriages, or even when you're sitting alone. You might ask, why do I feel so off when everything seems fine on the surface? This doesn't match the common narrative we're told about emotional discomfort in general. Too often, we're encouraged to interpret these feelings as deficiencies. Maybe you're not trying hard enough, or maybe you're just too sensitive. But this perspective can lead you into a dead end. If you ignore the signals long enough, you might find yourself feeling stuck, ineffective, or even directionless. People spend years in this state, spinning their wheels and wondering why nothing truly changes. Jung proposed a different and more hopeful perspective. He argued that the unconscious isn't just a random collection of unwanted thoughts and feelings. It's a rich and meaningful part of you that constantly seeks integration with the conscious self. When you feel disconnected or lost, it may be a sign that the unconscious is reaching out, sending you this discomfort as a prompt to ask questions. These moments of crisis are, in their own way, invitations to reconnect with yourself. Consider someone who has always felt out of place in their relationships. They might believe they're just unlucky or that they're destined to end up alone. But beneath their frustration might lie patterns they've buried, perhaps a tendency to people-please or a fear of being truly seen. These patterns often stem from parts of ourselves we've rejected, labeling them as too much or not enough. The loneliness and frustration in this example, they're like a flashing neon sign saying, "Look deeper." When seen through this lens, these feelings are not flaws. They are clues. They suggest that growth is possible, but only if you're willing to genuinely engage with yourself in a difficult yet powerful way. The disconnection you feel isn't meaningless or cruel. It's a subtle call to reimagine who you are and what you need. It's this reframing seeing emotional discomfort not as something to fight against, but as an opportunity that shifts everything. Instead of avoiding these feelings, you can begin to sit with them, not as enemies, but as teachers. This process is the first step in a larger journey known as individuation, a term Jung used to describe the process of becoming whole. By following the signals of your lost or fragmented feelings, you begin to map the way back to yourself. What's next? The journey doesn't end with acknowledging this call to wholeness. It's only the start. The real work begins when you start to uncover and embrace what you've buried in the depths of yourself, the very parts you've been running from. So where do you look first? What if the parts of yourself that you've avoided your entire life, the ones you've labeled as embarrassing, weak, or even shameful, are actually the keys to the person you're meant to become? It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But according to Carl Jung, these rejected parts of yourself make up what he called the shadow self. The shadow isn't some distant, dark force working against you. It's an essential part of who you are. It's everything about yourself that you've pushed aside because it didn't seem to fit who you thought you needed to be. Think back to a time when you felt the urge to speak up, but held back because you didn't want to appear rude. Or when a creative idea lit up your mind, but you dismissed it almost immediately, afraid it might fail. These moments seem small, but they reveal something significant. Parts of you, your assertiveness, your creativity, your instincts, are being placed out of sight. Over time, these suppressed traits don't disappear, they become the shadow. And ignoring the shadow doesn't make it harmless. In fact, the less you acknowledge it, the more it manifests in ways that feel beyond your control. This could look like unexpected bursts of anger or jealousy, self-sabotage, or patterns of bad decisions that don't seem to make sense on the surface. The shadow itself isn't inherently negative. Jung explained that even childish or primitive qualities are hidden within it. Qualities that could vitalize and embellish human existence, but convention forbids. What if the creativity you've buried, because it feels risky, could be a source of energy and purpose? Or the assertiveness you've rejected out of fear of seeming too much could help you set boundaries with the people around you? The shadow often hides these parts of ourselves, not because they're bad, but because at some point, you were taught to believe they didn't belong. Here's the tricky part. Confronting your shadow is uncomfortable. It can feel like looking into a mirror and seeing something raw and unpolished. That discomfort makes it tempting to avoid the whole thing entirely. However, the cost of avoidance is high. By ignoring your shadow self, those repressed traits can build up like steam in a pressure cooker. Jung described this when he said that the shadow becomes blacker and denser the longer it's ignored. Internal tension grows. You might find yourself getting stuck in unhealthy cycles, avoiding risks, downplaying your worth, or continuously adjusting yourself to fit external expectations. Now, imagine someone who has always been terrified of failure. This fear might lead them to silence their creativity, doubting their ability to succeed before they've even started. Over time, they stop expressing themselves altogether. But when they begin to revisit that creativity, when they pick up a brush or take a risk on an idea, it can open up something powerful. That long suppressed trait doesn't just return, it transforms them, bringing a sense of fulfillment they didn't think was possible. Or picture someone who has avoided being assertive because they were taught as a child that standing up for themselves was selfish or rude. Embracing that assertiveness could suddenly become the key to healthier, stronger relationships. The shadow, then, is not your enemy. It's a hidden part of you waiting to be acknowledged. And when you understand that it contains not only painful truths but also vital strengths, confronting it begins to seem less like a threat and more like an opportunity. Integration isn't about glamorizing these traits or letting them take over. Instead, it's about balancing them with the rest of your personality, allowing them to enhance your life rather than control it. Embracing the shadow is one of the most important steps on the path to individuation. It's through this process that you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you've long set aside. And when you stop rejecting who you are, you stop limiting who you can become. But the shadow is just one aspect of the unconscious. There are other, equally impactful forces within you, like the Anima or Animus. These hidden dimensions, when integrated, open the door to an even deeper level of balance and self-awareness. What if the pieces of yourself that feel unfamiliar, the ones you've dismissed or were taught to avoid, are exactly what you need to feel whole? To Carl Jung, this idea wasn't just abstract. It was central to how we as humans grow and balance our inner worlds. He defined these parts as the Anima and Animus. The Anima represents the unconscious feminine qualities within a man, while the Animus represents the unconscious masculine qualities within a woman. These aren't rigid rules, tied to gender, but symbols of contrasexual traits that exist in everyone. By integrating them, we unlock parts of ourselves that have been quietly waiting for recognition. Why does this seem so difficult? Often it's because these qualities clash with the persona we've been taught to project. The persona, the mask you wear to fit into social norms, is heavily influenced by societal expectations. A man may be raised to downplay tenderness or emotional sensitivity, seeing those as signs of weakness. For him, the Anima, often expressed through imagination or vulnerability, might feel unnatural or even shameful. Similarly, a woman might hesitate to step into her assertive or logical side, fearing judgment or rejection. Over time, these traits don't disappear. They drop into the unconscious, creating that sense of resistance so many people feel when they begin exploring them. Let's take a moment to make this concrete. Imagine a man who always felt deeply, but spent years suppressing his emotions because they didn't align with how he believed a man should act. He grew distant, unable to connect deeply with others, even though he desperately wanted to. That suppression didn't just shut out his emotion. It dulled his creativity, his ability to empathize, and even his capacity to fully experience joy. Now, contrast this with a woman who's been told since childhood to be agreeable and accommodating, steering clear of confrontation. She holds herself back professionally, avoids voicing her opinions, and feels trapped because every situation centers on other people's needs over hers. Both of them are missing something vital, not because they lack these qualities, but because those qualities are buried under layers of cultural conditioning. This is what resistance feels like. Alienation from parts of yourself that don't match the narrative you followed. Society reinforces this separation, turning sensitivity into something unmanly or assertiveness into something too aggressive. As Jung pointed out, suppressing the Anima or Animus leads to a kind of one-dimensional personality, a self that feels incomplete, waiting for integration to bring depth and color. Now, consider the potential of integration. A man who begins accepting his Anima might suddenly realize his capacity for deep emotional connection. His relationships become more meaningful, more authentic. He may even discover a creative side that had been stifled for years, a passion for painting, writing, or storytelling that helps him express his innermost self. The woman who confronts her Animus might develop the confidence to assert her boundaries, advocate for herself, or pursue ambitions she once avoided. Her assertiveness isn't aggression, but clarity, enabling her to move through life more decisively and with less self-doubt. Jung understood that the anima and animus aren't external forces. They've always been part of you, quietly shaping your potential. The goal isn't to become someone else, it's to reclaim what has always been yours but hidden. To integrate the anima or animus, Jung wrote, is to empower oneself. But empowerment through integration requires balance. These traits aren't meant to dominate your personality, nor should they be expressed unchecked. When integration is handled poorly, it can lead to harmful behaviors, what some might call toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. Recognizing that risk encourages a thoughtful approach, one rooted in balance and self-awareness. So how does this transformation begin? It starts with curiosity about the parts of yourself you've ignored. Identify where resistance arises, those moments when guilt, shame, or discomfort appear. What are those feelings trying to protect? The process isn't instant. Individuation, as Jung called it, unfolds over time. It's not something you force, but something you allow, learning to merge these unconscious aspects with the person you know yourself to be. The beauty of this journey lies in its pacing. There's no finish line, just a deepening understanding that continues throughout your life. And as you integrate these dimensions of yourself, your internal conflicts soften and your relationships strengthen. But this is just one part of the process. Individuation doesn't stop here. It unfolds into territories of the self that are as unique as you are. So what comes next? Keep exploring. Individuation isn't about fixing what's wrong with you or striving for perfection. It's about allowing yourself to be whole, embracing every part of you, including those you've hidden or rejected. This process isn't linear or something you rush through. As Carl Jung once said, self-realization is something that can take a lifetime, and very well may never be completed before we meet the grave. But each step brings clarity, balance, and authenticity. So, ask yourself, what have you ignored within you? Start exploring these parts, not with fear, but with curiosity. The journey is personal, ongoing, and uniquely yours.